everyone, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. I'm Amma Mama. I am going to just give kind of a quick update on things, let you know where I'm at for my reading so far this month for the TBR we worked on. If you watched my short video from last week at all, you'll know that I'd been getting over a cold that my son and I picked up, so I still have a little bit of kind of congestion and stuff, but I'm finally starting to get my energy back. I read quite a bit for a couple of the days while I was sick, so I'm gonna kind of talk about what I read. However, I also had been having problems where I've been like kind of getting dizzy-ish, like lightheaded and stuff, and I finally was able to get in to see the eye doctor because they've been trying to rule out what might be going on, and my glasses prescription is so far off. So I just got bifocals for the first time last year, and my distance portion of the lens is, I guess, way too strong, and the reading portion of the lens is way too weak, and so my eyes are just, I guess, having a hard time focusing. So it's been making reading kind of difficult, because like if I'm reading for a while and then I go to do other things, like that's when I would find that I would be starting to get dizzy, or I'd be or I don't even know if it's a dizzy, kind of a lightheaded feeling, or I would be doing other things and then I would look down at my book or sometimes my phone and get kind of that swoony feeling. And so it's definitely made reading a little bit more difficult this past week. It probably did not help that I've had this cold also. So it's been a whole thing. However, that all being said, I did finish three books, and I finished an audiobook that I've been listening to forever, because for some reason the audiobook was just really long. And I do listen to audiobooks some, but I used to listen to them more when I was working, and now that I've just been homeschooling the kids and stuff, I hadn't been listening to them as much, but it definitely came in handy this week. The audiobook of Pretty Things by Janelle Brown. I really enjoyed that book. I feel like I say that a lot. I don't know if it's been that I've been lucky that I've just happened to been getting books that I'm really enjoying lately, but this was one I didn't know anything about it. It was just, I want to say it was like a Amazon Prime. No, this was on my Audible account. I don't even know why I had it. So for some reason I had picked this book, but I don't think I knew anything about what it was. However, it was really good. The two main characters, well, I'll say the one main character, Nina, she lives her, I'm trying to figure out what I want to say without spoiling it if you haven't read it, but basically she's kind of like a con artist, thief of sorts, and so, but almost like I don't know that I would call her like a Robin Hood, because she's not like taking from the rich and giving to the poor, but she only steals from people who she considers unworthy of maybe having all of their wealth and their things, I guess I would say. And so she looks for targets who deserve to be stolen from. And I know that word deserve, I mean, does anybody really deserve to be stolen from? But she's got these like morals somehow that she's looking for, and she's got her reasons for doing it. She's got a mom who has got cancer and all of this. And so, but what I liked about the book is that I kept thinking like I had guessed where things were going, and then it would have a plot twist, and then I'd be like, oh, okay, now I know what's going to happen here, and then it would have another plot twist. And so right up until the very end, I still hadn't quite seen coming what ended up happening. And with her and one of her partner that she works with, Michael, and her mom, and the girl that they're trying to steal from throughout the majority of the story. So there's just a lot of like twists and stuff to it. So it made it definitely very fun to listen to. So I definitely would give that book a 4 stars. It was worth it. I mean, again, the audiobook version, I want to say it was like 30 hours, 20 hours. I don't remember. It was just really long. So I've been listening to it slowly for several months now. And so, like I said, because of everything going on with my eyes and being sick, I was able to finish it this week, and it was really good. I was glad I read that. The next book that I read while I've been sick is Crisscross by James Patterson. In this book, the main character, Cross, they witness the execution of a murderer that they put behind bars, but then a person who he has been after for a long time, who just goes by M, starts doing copycat murders of some of Cross's biggest cases, and is basically trying to get Cross entangled into this whole like web of everything, and luring Cross out and trying to entrap him for various things. And he starts like some psychological games with Cross that make Cross wonder if he has put the wrong people behind bars for certain things, make him second guess, like, did the person who just get executed, were they actually the murderer? All of that. And so they did a really good job. There were definitely some twists in this that I thought I knew who M was, and it turned out it was wrong at the end, which by the time I got there, I kind of realized that probably was not correct anymore. Overall, I gave this book a 4 because it was fun. It was a pretty quick read. I think I read it. I mean, again, keeping in mind I was sick, so I was sitting in bed for the majority of a few days. So all I did was really read for a few days in a row. So I read this in about 2 days. The only thing I will say, so I do have kids. I am older. I have children. And there's a scene in this book, and this isn't really a spoiler, but there's a scene in this book where Cross's son, who is 10, is out riding his bike and he gets a flat tire. And there's a guy there who is like, oh, I'm in the military and I ride for our bicycling team. Let me help you fix the tire. So that part I was like, okay, I guess I could see maybe, the kid taking that offer for help. But he can't fix the flat tire there, and so he drives the boy home, and it just drove me crazy because I know that, like, for me as a parent, and I assume for other people, like, we teach our kids, you don't go with strangers. You call your parent or whatever, but like, you don't get in somebody's car or vehicle that you don't know, no matter who they say they are. Unless it's obviously a police officer. And I don't know, maybe there was something in the book that I missed that like made it clear that it was safe for him to go home with, to get a ride home from the stranger that he just met at the park conveniently with a flat tire at the same time as him. Because that was the other thing, the circumstances of how the boy's tire got flat. It had me thinking like, oh, is this guy a bad guy? And then when he gets home, his dad's just like, oh, come on in and you can have some cookies that my grandma made. And so nobody at all ever is like, hey, by the way, son of mine, don't get in vehicles with people you don't know. And that comes back again later on in the book. So maybe that was like a purposeful choice that Patterson made to not put something like that in the book. But I will say that really drove me crazy because as a parent, especially, I'm always like, don't go with you don't go with strangers, children, like you don't do that. That's not safe. So that would be my only thing that I would say that drove me crazy about the book. But overall, I did enjoy this a lot. So I gave it a 4 stars with a demerit for that part of the book. The next book that I read was The Nanny by Lana Ferguson. And I will say that I kind of had a love-hate relationship with this book. It's a really quick read. The overall storyline I thought was pretty good. For me, I don't like a lot of like spice in my romance novels because sometimes I feel like it detracts from the story, or sometimes it feels like it's being used to try to move a storyline along that won't move as well without it. I don't know if that makes sense, because there was spice in, for example, like Fourth Wing, but in that book it felt appropriate at the times that it was in there and the way it was done, and it seemed like it went with the story, whereas in this book I felt like it was used to try to like push their relationship along, and I didn't care for that. And there was so much of it, and it was so graphic that I found myself, when I would get to those scenes, I ended up just kind of skimming and like finding where it was over and not even reading those sections of the book, because after the first one I was like, okay, I get it. I don't need to keep reading it. And I know, like, you know, her job in this book, so the story basically, she, Cassie, the main character, she loses her job that she has. She has to find another job. She's a college student working on her master's so that she can go into, I think, occupational therapy. And she gets a job as a nanny working for Aiden, who is a single dad and he's a chef. She finds out after she has moved in and is nannying for him that he was her like biggest customer on OnlyFans that she had at one point to help pay for bills and everything. And you kind of see that they had a little bit of a history through OnlyFans, but neither one of them knew who each other was. And I don't know how believable I found that part of it, but then when they moved in together and they were nannying, or she was nannying for him, I liked their characters, but everything felt very physical with them, and I didn't see as much of the emotional connection. I did like his daughter in the story, and I feel like the daughter helped kind of bring some of that emotional connection to the two of them that I didn't really see, because it just seemed like everything was just purely physical. And that's why I said that with all the spice it had in it, I just felt like it really relied a lot on that to drive the storyline. And so for me, it wasn't my favorite. It was still kind of, it was still a fun read. It was still a quick read. I didn't hate it or anything. It was just that I felt like I've read other romance novels that don't have all that spice, where I feel more of that emotional connection with the main characters, whereas this, I felt like that was lacking. So I gave this one a 3.5 stars because of all of that. Then I finished it's the Dark Tower series 4.5, Wind Through the Keyhole by Stephen King. That one, I gave it a 4 stars. It was, a solid story. I'm kind of to the point where, like, at this point in the series, I'm ready for him to just get back into the main plot of the books, of the main group of people getting to the Dark Tower, because, again, if you'd watched any of my other videos, in the 3rd book, it was like a backstory piece on one of the main characters and the girl he had been in love with, and it was a really good story, but it was really long, and it was all backstory for the most part, and it was good and it was interesting, and I'm sure that the information is helpful, but I was like, okay, what's going on with our main people though? Well, in this book, it was another, like, it wasn't a backstory. This one was more like a story within a story within a story, because we had a little bit more of the journey of our main people on their journey to the Dark Tower. And there's a storm coming, and so they end up having to like hunker down through this really big storm called the Stark Blast. And when they hunker down, they're like, Roland, tell us a story. And so he starts to tell them another story from his past. And as he's telling them this story from his past about his encounter when he was young with like a skinwalker and all this stuff, and there's some other stuff that happens, I'm not going to go into all of that, but while he's in the middle of telling that story, in the story that he's telling, he then tells another story that he had told to a boy in his past. So it ends up being, like I said, this story within a story within a story, and it was really good. It was really interesting. However, at the same time, I again was like, okay, can we get back to our main people? Like, are they ever going to get to the Dark Tower? Like, what's going to happen next? And I'm sure, because with the length of this series and everything else, I'm sure that the information that King shares in these books is going to come up later, and it's going to be useful, it's going to be helpful. But because I'm not that far yet and I don't see it, I've just been kind of like, okay, I'm ready to move on. Luckily, this book was a lot shorter, though. It was only like 300 pages, so it didn't take all that long to read. Like, I think it was only like, I don't know, 3 hours. I had to get the Kindle edition because I couldn't find a hard copy of it at the library or anything. And so it was a quick read. So I did really enjoy it. I gave it a 4 stars. I think the series, I'm still holding strong that I think the series itself is going to be a 5-star, but I'm definitely kind of to the point where I'm like, okay, can we see what's happening? Are they going to get to the Dark Tower? What's going to happen when they get there? Because I feel like there's been a lot of buildup to that, and we just haven't seen what's happening. And I know their journey is supposed to be long, given everything, but I'm kind of like, okay, let's get to the end. So we'll see. Then I have this one. I don't know if we can see this, but then my son had picked out the complete tales and poems of Edgar Allan Poe. Like I said, I'm pretty sure he just picked it because this book was huge, and it's got like a full novel, lots of short stories, all the poems, things like that from Edgar Allan Poe. The problem that I have been running into, I don't know how well you can see, but the font in this book is really small, and as bad as what apparently my eyes have gotten from last year to this year, this book I have not really been able to focus on well to read, which at first I was really frustrated about that because I'd prefer to just read it. However, because of how old these stories are and everything, they're all public domain, and so I've been able to find readings of each of the stories on YouTube, so I've been able to listen to them. And at first, like I said, I was kind of frustrated by that because I have the book, I just kind of wanted to read it. But between being sick, my eyes being tired, and the problems with the focusing and just all of those things, it's been convenient to be able to listen to them versus read them. Additionally, I have not read Poe in a very long time, probably not since I did my undergrad. And I was an English major, and so it's been a long time since I've read any Poe. I had forgotten how dense and I don't know, I'll just say how dense. I'd forgotten how dense some of the language is and the way his writing is. And the first couple stories that I read, the first one in here is The Unparalleled Adventure of One Hans Pfaall. And I had to listen to it on the YouTube. I found the audio recording, and it was a lot of like statistical kind of things about a guy who was trying to turn his car, I guess, kind of into like a hot air balloon of sorts, but he thought he was going to fly to the moon. And at one point, I almost forgot I was listening to Poe until some of the like more graphic stuff came in, and I was like, oh yeah, I almost forgot who wrote this. And so the story was good and all of that, and it was cute. And then the next one was the balloon hoax, and it was another one about a hot air balloon, and they were trying to travel across the Atlantic and how they got there and how long it took and all of this. And so I listened to that one. What I found that ended up being helpful is that when I did try to actually just sit and read this book before I realized my eyes were just not going to let me read this font, I also have ADHD, and reading the language and the writing style from when Poe wrote this and how he wrote it, and especially the content of these ones, I would find myself like, I'd read a paragraph and then I would be like, I have no idea what I just read, because my mind would start to wander. So listening to it actually helped me with this, because I just wasn't having to put quite as much brain power into the reading as I was able to just listen to it. So listening to it actually turned out to be more helpful. So once I get my new glasses, once those come in, I will try to read some of them, but I think for some of the stories, I will probably just continue listening to them, because they've been interesting. A couple, I mean, again, the first two that are about like the hot air balloons, they're probably not ones I would have ever just read had I not been like, okay, I'm going to try to read through this book. The next one that was in here, and the last one that I read this week, was the Mesmeric Revelation. And basically it was a person who was dying, and he calls somebody over to hypnotize him, in essence. And while he's in this hypnotic or mesmeric state, the man's asking him all these questions about God and life and who is God and who are we and all this stuff. And they have this whole huge conversation. And during the conversation, the guy's like, well, I can't answer this, and ask it different. And they're just, they're going back and forth. And it was definitely interesting. But then at the very end, and this I guess is a spoiler, so if you plan on reading this, skip ahead a little bit. But at the very end, he brings him out of his hypnotic trance and realizes the man has been dead probably since around the time they started their conversation. And so again, it is Poe, but sometimes like I almost forgot who I was reading, because the ones that I remembered reading when I was younger were like the Telltale Heart and the Raven. And so you almost forget that you're reading from the same person. So that's what I have finished reading. I haven't gotten very far into it, but I started reading The Map of Time. This is one that, it's not a super small font, but it's not a bad size, but with how bad my eyes have been, it's just enough that I can't read for a very long amount of time. So I'm debating on if I want to get the audiobook of this one, just to kind of help me, because it's going to be probably this week still, or next week before I get my glasses. So we'll see. But this book I found at the used bookstore, and I added it to my TBR for this month. But this one, it's about a guy. So basically it says, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it says, it's set in Victorian London, with characters both real and imagined. It says it's a triple play of intertwined plots in which a skeptical H.G. Wells is called upon to investigate purported incidents of time travel to save lives and literary classics, including Dracula and The Time Machine, from being wiped from existence? What happens if we change history? Felix Palma explores the question in The Map of Time, weaving a historical fantasy as imaginative as it is exciting, a story full of love and adventure that transport readers to a haunting setting in Victorian London for their own taste of time travel. So I'm about almost 30 pages in. It's been good so far. I'm enjoying it. I believe this is a translation because I think the original was in Spanish. Yeah. El Mapa del Tiempo. So it's a little bit older book. It looks like this English translation is from 2011, but it's been interesting so far. So I definitely am hoping that I will really enjoy this one and I can get through it. I'm hoping to do kind of I don't know yet. I'm going to see what I'm able to do this week, given how my eyes are. I have some ideas of what I want to do, but I'm not sure, between the fact that I'm still just now kind of getting over this cold, which this thing has lasted a good 2 full weeks. Between that and my eyes, we will see. We'll see what happens this week, but I have high hopes for myself, so I'll see what I end up doing. But so I'm not going to really say too much. I have some ideas of what I want to do. It's just a matter of, will I be able to do them this week? I'm not sure. But in the meantime, I just wanted to hop on and at least give a quick recap of what I was able to read this past week, in spite of being sick and in spite of my eyes and all of that. And I will see you all next time. Bye.